When I was trying to get into the shows in New York, here I am, this 22-year-old kid, and everybody else is double my age almost. They've been on Broadway for 20 years. I
Mm.
didn't know anybody. I didn't have enough experience. I wasn't good enough. The only thing I did have, though, was I just was really good at getting in front of people. And so what I did was I told everybody that I was writing an article for Bass Player magazine, and I wanted to interview what it's like to work on Broadway. So I wanted to interview all the bass players on Broadway. And so every single one of them let me into the pit, let me watch the show, meet the musicians, interview them for an hour. And every one of my questions was like, how does a guy like me get a gig like this? Like that was my question for everybody. The only challenge was I didn't write for Bass Player magazine. I made the whole thing up.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the podcast that inspires action and helps you to grow your side hustle into a thriving income stream. I'm your host, Joan Posivy, author of The Way Success Works. Marc Ensign did end up working full-time as a bass player, but eventually his skill in marketing took over. First as a side hustle, but eventually as his 9-to-5. Now that Marc gets to do both, he feels like he's got the best of both worlds. And he shares a valuable idea on how you too can create the best of both worlds in your life. He also reveals where you need to focus your marketing efforts for the biggest payoff. When he talks about creative and unconventional tactics he's used to gain attention and secure high-profile clients, it's not only fun, but it makes this episode an inspiring idea generator for your marketing endeavors. His stories illustrate how thinking outside of the box, blended with persistence and perseverance, can make a significant difference in standing out from your competition and achieving success. But before all that, if our chats are sparking your entrepreneurial spirit and providing valuable insights, consider showing your support by visiting sidehustlehero.com/support. That's where you can shoot me a virtual coffee. It's a real thing, and a fun way to give the show a caffeinated thumbs up. Thank you so much. Now here's my conversation with bass player and creative marketer, Marc Ensign. Well, welcome, Marc.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I understand that one of the loves of your life is playing the bass, and that at one time you actually had a career as a touring musician. What caused you to leave the industry and then years later, it seems, jump back in?
That's a great question. So yeah, I went to school for music, graduated with a degree in music performance, every parent's dream come true. So, I toured around with cruise ships and bands and wedding bands. And my goal was to get on Broadway. Like that was really my dream. And I was very persistent. I was that guy that would just knock on every door, pick up the phone, call anybody who would listen. I got gigs writing for magazines in order to get myself in front of people. Like I did all of the stuff that they teach you, how to build a brand or a personal brand. But back before that was even a term. This
Yes.
is, looking at 1995, 96, like in that kind of realm. And so I eventually got a gig playing with the show Rent. And then toured around the country with that for a long time. Then somewhere around there, I met my now wife. She wasn't my wife at the time, obviously, but she is now. And I just wanted to settle down. Like it became a thing where I was tired of being on the road. It is grueling. I mean,
Yes.
It is a lot of fun, ending the night with a standing ovation, all that kind of fun stuff. But as you get older, it gets a little grueling. It gets a little difficult. And so
living out of a suitcase and just,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I came home and decided I still love playing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play, but I'm going to start a side hustle in marketing because I must know what I'm doing because I was able to get all these great gigs. Let me see if I can help other people do it too. And so I started this side hustle it was a marketing company for musicians and artists. And it went okay, except for the fact that like musicians and artists didn't really have all that much money.
Right.
So I didn't get paid very much for it. But at some point, I had a very creative approach, and I got somehow somebody at Nike kind of caught wind of what I was doing and asked me if I could do a project for them, which I did. And I doubled my invoice because I was like, this is Nike. They got to have a lot more than the average musician. And I sent them an invoice and they called me the next day. They said, we cannot submit this invoice. It is going to cost twice as much for us to cut the check, as the amount of the check. Why don't you triple it and resend it to us? And so I
No
was like, oh,
way.
okay, we're not going to do musicians and artists anymore. We're going to start focusing on some bigger companies, and then that took off, and then this really kind of weird switch of like now all of a sudden the music thing became the side hustle, and then eventually the music thing kind of went away up until recently.
Mm. Well, if you were away from the industry for seems like quite a little while there, how did you actually jump back in?
The marketing was the one that paid the bills consistently.
Okay.
And so that's what I went with. And then a couple of years ago, right around the beginning of COVID, before everything shut down, but it was like as everything was shutting down,
Okay.
I got a call from the producers of Rent, and they said, "Look, we have the show, it's out on tour, and I was wondering if you can kind of fill in because the bass player has COVID, so we need somebody to fill in for 2 weeks." And I haven't, I haven't played the show in 10 or 15 years or whatever it's been.
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh yeah, yeah, I probably can. Let me run the show a couple times and make sure I still have it. Like, when would you need me by? And they're like, the show is in like 4 hours. And so I'm like, oh, we're doing that. It was like,
Oh
yeah,
my
because
gosh.
COVID. Like, he can't play for another week. He's got COVID. He's done. And the show was started in 4 hours, and
In your
and
in your
where they
hometown.
were,
Yeah.
yeah, well, they were it was 3 hours away. And so I had to fly down there. By the time I got there, I was there just in time to do sound check with the band for about 15 minutes. And then I played the show, and then I was on the tour for 2 weeks. And it occurred to me, I was like, wow, like I can actually do this. I don't want to come out here for a year, but man, this is a lot of fun. I forgot how much I missed this.
Yes.
Was able to run my business from the hotel or from the tour bus. And then I just had a show at night, and it wasn't really that big of a deal. It was a little tiring, but it was something that I didn't realize how much I needed it until it was presented to me like, as you don't have a choice. We need you to help us out.
Yes.
And then I walked away from that experience thinking like, okay, how do I build this into a side hustle where I can go out a couple times a year or play a couple shows? Like, 'cause I really just like playing Broadway shows. I don't like playing in bands that much anymore.
Okay.
And do this part time, just for fun.
Well, the job of a touring musician like that must be highly competitive. Is that
Yeah, yeah. It's highly competitive, and it's hard to really kind of get your foot in the door. So when I was trying to get into the shows in New York, here I am, this 22-year-old kid, and I'm 22, 23, and everybody else is double my age almost. They've been on Broadway for 20 years. I
mm,
didn't know anybody. I didn't have enough experience. I wasn't good enough. Like I had every strike against me. The only thing I did have though was I just was really good at getting in front of people. And
mm.
what would happen was people stopped calling me back because I was a nuisance. Like I was relentless. And so what I did was I told everybody that I was writing an article for Bass Player magazine, and I wanted to interview what it's like to work on Broadway. So I wanted to interview all the bass players on Broadway. And so every single one of them let me into the pit, let me watch the show, meet the musicians, interview them for an hour, gave me a copy of the music. Like every one of my questions was like, how does a guy like me get a gig like this? Like that was, that was my question for everybody. The only challenge was I didn't write for Bass Player magazine. Like I made the whole thing up, and which I know there's no integrity in that. So I'm not suggesting anybody do that. But once everybody started giving me these interviews, I reached out to the magazine. I was like, I don't know if you guys would be interested in this, but I got everybody's attention on Broadway, and I'm gathering all this information. I'd love to put it into an article. And they're like, we'd love the idea. Why don't you do that? And they gave me $350 or whatever. And I actually wrote the article, and it was published. It was one of the cover stories for one of the magazines. It was the epitome of like personal branding and just putting yourself out there and
Yeah.
in print and just doing the things that other people weren't willing to do.
Oh, Mark, I wish we had this conversation a week ago because the episode that just dropped in my wrap-up comments, it was all about differentiating yourself from the
Mhm.
from the competition, from others, and breaking through. And that was one of the things that I suggested was to get in touch with and basically interview top people in the industry, for all the reasons why I laid out in that episode. And your example is like a perfect example of that. I love it.
Right, except for the
Yeah.
lying part.
Except the lying part. Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, clearly your area of expertise is in marketing.
Yeah.
How would you define marketing and how does it differ from advertising?
So marketing to me is getting people interested in an idea.
Okay.
is helping them paint a picture. We're not looking to sell anything, necessarily. I mean, at some point sales kicks in, but true marketing is really about trying to get their attention. Now, where branding comes into it, that's where you build the credibility. When you have a strong brand, people are willing to buy just because they like, because of the name and the history or whatever it is. Like we all can agree, McDonald's does not make the best hamburgers in the world,
Right.
and yet they sell more than anybody else. And it's not because the food is good, it's because the brand is great. And we just know the brand, we trust the brand for whatever reason, so forth. Marketing are all the signs on the side of the highway that kind of point you in that direction, that get you interested, that make you hungry as you're driving down the highway towards your destination. And because it's not like somebody's hungry every single mile, but it is like, when you get hit with it over and over and over again, and you see these pictures and you see maybe a funny saying or something that grabs your attention,
Yes.
makes you go, yeah, that's what I want. That's because that seed has been planted. So that really is marketing.
I just had a flashback to the road trips with my mom when I was a kid. She would always
Right.
want to go into McDonald's because it was safe in the sense that we knew what to expect.
Right. Yeah, there's no question. You know what you're getting. You know it's not going to look like a picture on the billboard, like, so you're not fooling anybody.
Yeah.
But we know what we're in for.
Hmm. Well, I've often said that our external results are a mirror reflection of our internal reality. And if we want to change or improve our results, our happiness, our health, wealth, our marketing effectiveness, it starts as an inside job in the way we think. And it's all connected because our thoughts and feelings about, say, marketing drive our behavior, giving us a result. So if someone has maybe a poor outlook on marketing, they're not going to put themselves out there then perhaps in a way that they need to. And so let's start with the mindset part of it. How should we view ourselves to be a savvy marketer, and maybe what is our attitude towards marketing? What should it be?
I agree with you. I think it does start with how you see yourself. I mean, if we're talking about from the perspective of like a side hustle or an individual, like a personal brand or anything along those lines, it does start inside within yourself. If you don't believe that you're really good at this thing, then how are you going to convince me that you're really good at this thing?
Okay.
And so if you shy away from, well, I don't want to post it, I feel stupid, I'm afraid someone's going to steal my thing, or that insecurity creeps into your message, we're all going to see that. Like it doesn't take much for us to go like, oh, something's off. I may not
Right.
know exactly
Yeah.
what it is, versus the person that's half as good as you are, but they're really loud and boisterous about it, and they're really putting themselves out there, and they're like, they're the ones getting all the jobs. Like, how is that possible when I'm so much better than they are? But you're in your corner, afraid to kind of put something out there because, like, well, I don't want to upset my Facebook, or like so I think that really kind of building that confidence, and just be willing to take the leap. A lot of times I think side hustles or brands are unsuccessful because they're unwilling to just try, put something out there, put something vulnerable out there, be real, and let's see where it goes. People aren't going to shun you. You're not going to be, sent onto some island somewhere.
Yeah.
Try it, see what happens.
One of our side hustle heroes, Annalisa DeMarta, she's an Amazon pro in the sales area. And her motto is risk a little, learn a lot. Give it a try. It's going to give you data that you can then tweak what you're doing. I wanted to
Right.
ask you about the mindset because not everybody is going to have the confidence to get in contact with the equivalent of all these bass players and make up this
Right.
story and interview them, right?
Well, and at that time, I mean, I was just a kid. I was probably 22, 23, and I didn't know enough to know that I didn't belong there. It was like I always look
Yeah.
back to that time, and especially when I get stuck on something and I'm like, ooh, that's a big pool. I get like a little nervous by some of the other people that are swimming around. And I think back to like, man, where's that dumb kid that didn't know that like, I didn't know I didn't belong. I didn't know I wasn't good enough. I didn't know, like nobody told me. So I went for it and I
Yeah,
got
yeah.
it. Could I have done the same thing today? I don't know. Sometimes it takes a little bit of that ignorance of I had nothing to lose. I
Right.
didn't have a career. I lived in my mom's basement. Like
Hmm.
What was going to happen to me if and so I gave it a shot. And sometimes like we just have to tap into that person.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I tend to work with a lot of 19 to 30-year-olds. I really love working with that age group. And I've often said to them, do the things like you just described, Mark, with interviewing everyone. Do that now, because I find that so many of us older adults, we want to help you. We want to see you succeed. And so get out there and give it a shot. There's people that want to help you. So maybe there was some of those bass players that thought, the guy's a little rusty, but man, he's going somewhere. How many people have stepped up to the plate like that? So definitely to your advantage. So that's the internal, the mindset. Let's look at the external. If my side hustle isn't really gaining traction, where would I even start in terms of a marketing strategy? What would be my step one even?
so unless you have like a lot of disposable income, which most people, don't in order to invest in their side hustle, like they
Right.
might have a little bit, but like it's not like, like, geez, I wish I knew what to do with this 20 grand a month.
Yeah.
They might have a couple $100 or whatever. The best thing that you can do is really kind of create content, position yourself as a content creator, share your message. A lot of times we hold everything a little too close to the chest, like, because we're afraid that somebody's going to steal our secret sauce, and nobody cares enough to do that. The more that you can share and position yourself and show people what you're made of and what you do and what you offer, the better chance you're going to have that they're going to want to hire you, or they're going to want to, buy from you, or,
Hmm.
get to know you better, or join your community, or whatever it is that you're trying to build and grow. But really, the first step is like we live in a world where there's so much out there for
Yeah.
free that if you're not willing to give first, you're not going to get. And so, what I find like a lot of like smaller businesses or side hustles where they don't do well is because their first thought is, let me sell this thing instead of let me help these people. And so if you can
Mm.
start by helping people, then people will start to buy from you.
Right. Because you've given them time to gain that trust.
Yeah. And you're proving yourself, and and you're giving, you're putting yourself out first, and
Hmm.
then creating safe space for them to go to say like, hey, I could use some more, or I would like some more help. Like it's a god awful analogy, but we already went through the lying thing, so we might as well go into this too. It's kind of like the drug dealer thing where they
Yep.
start by walking around the town giving little hits for free
Yep.
to kind of get you hooked on it. It's that same kind of concept. Give something away for free. Give people some value, not fake value, not like I'm going to give you this really terrible fake ebook that
Right.
that is of no value just so I can get your email address and hammer you with emails. It's really do something to help somebody or to give to somebody, or give them a little taste of what you can do, and it'll come back to you tenfold.
Yeah. When you were just talking about that honesty piece for a moment, just it was a couple of days ago, I started to get hounded by this person on LinkedIn, and they were saying, "Oh wow, we love what you're doing, and we'd love to interview you." And there was just something about it because I am a guest on a lot of other shows, but this one it's just like there's something there, and it was, "Can you jump on this 5 minute call or 10 minute call?" And I wrote back and I basically said, "Look, if you truly are looking to book me as a guest, send me a links to your stuff and I'll take a look and get back to you. But I'm really not interested in signing up for a program or becoming your client or whatever."
Right.
I said, "You see where I'm going with this?" And I haven't heard back from them.
Of course. Because they probably sprayed that message to
Yeah.
10,000 other people, and somebody just went like, "Oh, this sounds like a great opportunity,"
Yeah.
and responded, and then out of those people that probably did that, maybe one or two bought something. And it's just not the best way to go about it. If you offered value to those 10,000 people, I guarantee you'd probably sell more at the end of the day.
Mm,
Now, it might require a little more effort on your part,
right.
and it's a lot more hands-on, it's a lot more difficult, but if you're willing to do the difficult part, you get to reap the rewards.
One of the favorite ways that I used to advertise or market public seminars that I would do is offer a free evening, what we called previews. And it was 2 or 3 hours of really content rich, lots of actionable steps for people to take away. But at the same time, too, by the end of the night, I was inviting people for the paid weekend seminar. And I loved that format because the person received a lot of value, whether they signed up or not. And it gave and you alluded to it before, it gave us the opportunity to connect and see if we were a fit. So the people that did sign up for the weekend, we knew we'd have a rocking time because we already
Mhm.
made that connection.
And who knows where those other people are going to go? Like
Mhm.
they may be like a not now, not necessarily a
Right.
no, but they're like, you know what? I give me a couple months and I'm going to revisit this. Like, you never know. Then you keep in touch with them, keep adding value, and then they eventually come around.
And can you think of times when that has panned out for you? Is there like a way that you follow up, or if you could just speak to that for a moment?
I always try to keep in touch with whether I try not to do the typical newsletter kind of stuff just because I feel like it's just so impersonal. So it's a little more difficult to try to be a little more personal about, reaching out, sending little things, emails, whatever. We have kind of a hierarchy of people. There are people that that like, all right, these guys just aren't ready right now, but they may be a good fit. I really think I could help these guys. So let me keep an eye on them versus like, this is not a good fit, but it's somebody I want to, like I like them and I want to be able to help them. And so we'll have different levels of that. So we'll send out like a little more group email type of thing, not newsletter, but like something valuable to those folks, on the lower end. But then on the bigger end, every now and then I'll go to their website and I'll see like, hey, I noticed you made this change. How's that going? Or what do you think
Mm.
about this? Somebody on my team, like she's notorious for finding mistakes on people's websites. So she's like, hey, remember that guy that, I found a bunch of mistakes. And so rather than like charging them or holding on to it, saying like,
Yes.
we'll reach out and just say, hey, we just happen to be on your site, saw a couple things, take a look. If you need help fixing them, let me know. I'd be happy to have somebody on my team fix it for free. Don't worry about it. And we'll just kind of put that out there because again, you're planting seeds and at some point, maybe they'll need help. Maybe they'll know somebody that needs help. We live in a world where we want to plant the seed and eat the fruit the same day, and it just doesn't work that way. It takes some time. You have to cultivate and sunshine and
Right.
soil and all that other stuff.
Yes.
And it just takes a little bit of time.
Oh, it sure does. And in fact, there's a major analogy that I use in my book, The Way Success Works, about planting that orange seed. And the piece that I was just reminded of is you and I plant the seed in fertile soil. We care for it and nurture it. We make those points of contact, the phone calls, the emails. But for the longest time, we don't see any growth. We don't see any return. But you and I know that there's a lot of growth taking place. There's that person at the other end that says, "Oh, wow, Mark was actually at my website. This isn't just some spammy email. He was actually at the website and they noticed these mistakes that need to be corrected." And so there is that growth taking place, and it's only over a period of time that you see it sprout. So don't think that all your efforts aren't bearing fruit one day.
Yeah, and look, I tell the whole getting on Broadway thing, and I harassed people and wrote the article and all this other kind of stuff. Like, that's a 30-second story, but the truth is, it was almost 2 years. Like,
Yeah.
it didn't happen overnight. Like, it took a lot. It took showing up to a lot of shows. I was digging through the garbage for playbills. I was stealing phone books from the bus station so I can call people. I'm sure there's restraining orders out there with my name on. Like I was calling people every day. I made myself known, and it took a long time before somebody said, "All right, why don't we have lunch?" Like, cool.
Yeah.
That was the first step. So, like, if you want something bad enough, you'll go through hell and back to get it, and if you're willing to do that, you will figure out how to get there.
There was probably some people or some offices that you were like so calling them all the time. At one point, if you stop calling them, they're thinking, "Gosh, I hope Mark isn't sick."
Yes,
I swear,
I know.
we didn't get his call. It's already Thursday afternoon.
I ended up calling one of the musical contractors and I finally got in touch with him. And he's like, look, I know you've called. Everybody's talking about how you're harassing everyone out there. And I got to be honest with you, like you're going about this the wrong way. Try this. And I'm like, perfect. Like some advice, Got a little bit of
Wow.
advice. He's like, don't call trombone players and guitar players and piano players. Like just focus on bass players and see if you can get a job subbing for other gigs outside of Broadway. Help them out in other ways. And I was like, that's great advice.
Yeah.
So now instead of calling 150 people, I had like 15 people to start calling now. So then,
Yeah, you could really harass them now.
now you're really, get more done. But yeah, word got out and, but I was persistent, would not give up because I wanted it too badly.
As an idea generator, share with us, if you would, some of your favorite marketing campaigns, things that you did that helped you stand out from the crowd.
Oh, that's a good one. I always try to take a different or interesting approach to all this stuff. So there's two that I could think of. One was a big hosting company, and I was brought into, it was for a separate project, but I was brought in to speak with them, and then I went to the marketing department and talked to them, and I was like, what's the biggest thing that's kind of holding you back or causing you problems? And they said, they're like, we're having a hard time getting big contracts, like shows like American Idol and Oprah and all that kind of stuff. And so I was like, all right, well, here's what we can do. Like, they had a list of 30 of them. So I was like, do you have a budget of around 150 to $200, per? And they're like, sure. And so we created this box. It was this really nice, slick black box. And when you opened it up, it said, you're either going to need one of these. And it had the rep's business card. And then underneath it said, or you're going to need all of these. And when you open the box up completely, it was trial sizes of Pepto-Bismol and Acted and headache medication and like migraine stuff and like all of the like anti-diarrhea medication, like all of that stuff. Like, and the message we were sending was like, we're either going to take care of you and you're never going to need anything other than our phone number,
Right.
or prepare to stay up at night with stomach aches and headaches and stress and all this other stuff. And it was great. Like they went absolutely nuts.
Oh.
And it worked really well. It grabbed everybody's attention. Like, I love stuff that just grabs people's attention and makes, like, you don't always need to slap your logo on, on a squeezy toy and send it to somebody. Like, there are ways to just really grab their attention and so they don't forget.
And that's so unique. It's so memorable.
Oh, it was great. It was so much fun. And we did another one. I had a client that wanted to, their goal was to be on Oprah. And it was her last favorite things episode when she was on ABC. And so, they had a product, like this little gadget. And like, they asked, "Do you think we can get an Oprah?" I was like, "I don't know." But stranger things have happened. And so what we did was we got a list of everybody that worked at Harpo Studios and whatnot. And we sent everybody in their office one of these little gadgets, except for Oprah. Like, we gave one to everybody except for her. And so she's walking around the office, getting her hair done and going to the wardrobe, and everybody's talking about this thing that they got. And she's looking for hers, and she didn't get one. So she actually called the company. It was just like, how come I didn't get one? She was like, really, she had one of her assistant call and was very upset about it. And so they sent her a case of them, and then she was brought on the show.
Wow. What was it?
It was, so they do kitchen gadgets. And so
Okay.
it was called the Herb Saver. And it was this like contraption where you would put like basil in it, and it would keep basil alive for like 3 or 4 weeks in your refrigerator versus like that's 4 days that you get now.
I need one of those. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And they were on the show. They were highlighted on the show, but it all started with, let's get one in front of everybody else.
And the idea was that Oprah would presumably be feeling left out and notice it.
We wanted everybody on her team to get one. And because the thing is, you got to remember that like everybody sends stuff to Oprah, especially with favorite thing episodes. So she's got boxes and boxes and boxes. Meanwhile, nobody sends anything to the person that does Oprah's hair. So when she got something, she was just elated, or whoever like was in the office, like they were just like, "Oh my God, I got a present too now." And so it was a great way to get everybody talking and just kind of share it.
And another great lesson in making friends of the frontline employees as well, the gatekeepers, right?
Exactly.
Mm.
And buy your way in.
I also heard a story about you and a remote control helicopter.
Oh, geez. Yeah, that was another one. That's funny. So we were trying to get the attention of I was a new helicopter touring operator in New York City. And so like there was like the big red bus kind of company, and that does like helicopter tours and all that. And then this new company came around, and it all started with like, I wonder who's doing their marketing, and they weren't doing so great. They were handing out flyers on the street. Like, they didn't really have much of a plan. The buses were always half empty. And the helicopters and stuff as well. And so we went out and bought a helicopter, and like a remote control helicopter, not a real helicopter.
Yeah. I was just going to say, yeah, that's a big budget.
Remote control helicopter. We put a sign on it that said, "How come you won't call us back?" with our phone number on it. And we sent it to the CEO's assistant, who proceeded to fly it around the office with our number on it. Eventually, like I think it was like a day or two later, he called. So
I wonder if she had the ability to fly it into his office. That would have been hilarious.
I, yeah, but again, like it's those things that you figure out, so if you can come up with personal stuff that means something to them, not to you, but to them,
Mm, right.
and in order to get their attention, that's really how you get people to go like, hey, wait a minute, who is this? Who's that from again? Because you've done a little bit of research, you put something out there that's interesting to them, not necessarily interesting to you.
Yeah. And especially beneficial since you're a marketing agency. It's just so perfect.
Right.
Yeah. You guys must have a lot of fun dreaming up some of these ideas some days.
It's exhausting sometimes. It's absolutely exhausting sometimes.
So, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Marc?
So you can come visit us at loudmouse.com. It's the name of our company is loudmouse.com. And that we were just talking before, about where the name came from before we started recording. And it's one of my favorite stories that I was looking for the name of the company, and I was driving my wife crazy because I'm really particular.
Okay.
And so we're about a month in at this point, and she and I are on a road trip, and she's like, you have to have a name of the company by the time we get there, otherwise I'm naming the company, and she doesn't name the company. So we started running through all these names and came up with the name Loudmouse, but the domain was taken. And I had reached out to the guy who had owned the domain name. And, I was like, how much you want to, do you want to buy it? And do you want to sell it for? And he called me back. He's like, I've gotten a couple of offers around 10 grand for the domain, but I never sold it because I had this idea. But, he's like, I went to your blog and I was writing a personal development type of blog post about just being a good human. Like it was all about like giving back and serving. And he's like, I read a couple of your blog posts, and he's like, and I want to return the favor. And so I'm going to give you the domain name for free.
What?
And so he signed the domain name over to me, loudmouse.com. And then we got off the phone. And then an hour later, he called back. I was like, oh, he's got buyer's remorse. He wants it back. And so he called back and he goes, I forgot. I also have the .net. Why don't you take that too? And
Wow.
so I started this company like on day one with this idea that this random stranger believed in my idea more than I did, because I was not willing to spend 10 grand, but he was willing to give up 10 grand. The name stems from this idea of wanting to give anybody a voice, no matter how big or small. And that's a lot of what like we've been talking about. Like it doesn't take much to go out and buy, a $75 helicopter and ship it to a company in order to get like a major opportunity.
Yeah.
Now they don't always work. I've certainly sent out plenty of things that just never came back, or I've dressed up as a giant pizza slice to meet like clients. Like I've done some pretty ridiculous things that didn't always go so well. But, more often than not, you will get something. You will get some reaction or some response if you're willing to put yourself out there. So, and so the idea behind Loudmouse is just like anybody should be able to get that level of attention if they really kind of put their mind to it.
So the website to go to then is loudmouse.com.
Correct.
Excellent.
Yep.
We'll make sure that that's in the show notes.
Awesome.
So, what's your best tip to inspire others to start or grow their side hustle dream, Marc?
I think the biggest thing for me was during that break of when I transitioned from being a musician to being a marketer, and then the music thing kind of went away, and 10 years went by, came and went, had kids and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's where the family montage kicks in. And then all of a sudden I get called in the middle of COVID to go fill in for a show. And since then I've filled in for like a dozen other shows
Fun.
over the past couple of years. Like I've really kind of learned that it's not this thing of I walked into it with like I have to be a marketer. If that's what I have to choose. Either I'm a marketer or I'm a musician. Which one do I want? Well, the marketer pays the bills. Let me do that. And I really got that it's not an or, it's an and. I can be a marketer and a musician, and I can prioritize however I'm going to prioritize. And I've had that thing where I've gone out on the road for 8 weeks at a time. I think that's the most I'll go, is about 8 weeks at a time. And I get to throw myself into being a musician and work a little bit on the bus or in the hotel. But at that moment, I'm a musician and a marketer. But most of my days, I'm a marketer and a musician. Like it's so fluid. There's no rule that says you can't make both happen if they really bring you joy.
Especially these days with the advances in technology and communication.
Sure.
Anything that you can create in your mind, you can create externally.
Right.
And
So my best advice with that is just the and not or,
right.
because we tend to, well, what's it going to do for my job? Or what if they find out? Or what if this happens? Or what if I make a fool of myself? What if I just go for it and just and the heck out of everything?
When you're saying that it's not either or, but and, you're really shifting to, all right, now how can I do this? Oh, I
Right.
could do it part-time. Yeah.
Because what I did on the music thing, like I didn't want to go out on the road for year-long contracts or six
Yeah.
month long contracts.
Yeah.
And so when it became an and, I was like, well, how do I make this work? And so what I did was I positioned myself, again, being a marketer, how do I position myself differently from everybody else?
Yeah.
And so what I did was I reached out to everybody. I said, look, I'm a bass player. I've been doing Broadway for a long time. I can read just about anything within about 24 hours notice. If you ever have an emergency where a bass player can't make the show, or gets fired or gets sick or whatever, you can fly me in. I can open the show that night if I had to. And I position myself as that guy. And so I'm not the guy that you want, year round, but when there's an emergency, bass player emergency, call me. And those are the calls I get. Like I got a call on a Saturday and I had to open a show on Monday. And so I flew out to Wisconsin or wherever it was that Sunday. And that allows me to, just like you said, like I figured out how can I have this thing and still not have it completely turn my life upside down? So this way I don't spend weeks preparing. Like I just show up and I do the show. And then after a week or two, when they find when the other guy comes back, I come home.
Right.
And
And best of both worlds. And that's
yeah.
exactly how I described it when I was the road warrior for so many years. Only in my case, I would be out for maximum 2 weeks. It was
Okay.
1 or 2 weeks. And then I'd come home to paradise and back and forth. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
And in your case, with the full-time marketing firm that you've got the ability to do that pretty much from anywhere as long as you've got the internet connection, right? So,
Yeah. As long as I can connect to the internet. And it's not always easy. Like I'll have meetings that'll line up with the schedule where we're on a bus. And so I was like,
sure.
we got to reschedule. So there's
Yeah.
a little bit of juggling, but it's so minimal compared
Yeah.
to, everything else. It doesn't always work, but
Mhm.
it gets easier. And when it does work, it's just so much fun.
And when
So,
it doesn't work, you've got the ability to say, oh, you know what? It would be work really well next time if we did this.
right. Yeah,
So,
like you learned a lesson. Like we there was a guy who owned a big pizza chain. He was doing a talk and was trying to get on his radar. So I was wearing a giant pizza slice costume, and in the middle of his speech, I had 20 pizzas delivered to the stage, and they instantly dragged me out by the crust. Uh, because we broke the rule of no outside food allowed in the banquet hall. And I was like, I never would have thought of that.
no.
So it threw everything upside down. It was a really bad idea. Like it was way too much, but it turned into a great story. But then you learn and you do things a little differently next time.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your story and your very creative marketing
Sure.
strategies and ideas. And of course, for being today's Side Hustle hero.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
While it's fun to hear the creative marketing ideas that Mark has executed, the question becomes, how can you and I come up with those out-of-the-box ideas? One answer is to connect with people from outside of your industry. They can provide fresh, innovative ideas that you can adapt to your side hustle. When you step outside your professional circle, you gain access to different perspectives and strategies and problem-solving methods that have worked in other sectors. These insights can be a goldmine for creative ideas. For example, Southwest Airlines wanted to speed up its airport operations and make its customers happy. So what did they do? They looked at NASCAR, where the pit crews can fix and refuel the cars in seconds. The efficiency of a pit crew inspired changes to how teams handled baggage, refueled planes, and performed maintenance, reducing time between flights. Earlier this week, I was talking to a couple of people about how they use AI in their companies. One is in food manufacturing and the other's in construction. That conversation, in turn, inspired me to better use AI to further a new creation that I'm working on. That conversation happened to be about AI, but I also often ask successful entrepreneurs, regardless of their industry, what's your best method for attracting new customers? Or tell me about your most effective marketing campaign. Cross-industry connections encourage out-of-the-box thinking, breaking the mental models that we often develop within our own fields. This cross-pollination of ideas leads to new approaches and potential breakthroughs that might not have been obvious before. Embracing winning ideas from other industries is a powerful way to spark growth, innovation, and creative marketing ideas for your side hustle. Well, that's a wrap for today. You'll find links to Marc's website and the full show notes at our website, sidehustlehero.com. If you're enjoying what you're seeing in this podcast, it would be so appreciated if you would take a moment and add a comment, share the episode, and please subscribe. It'll let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thanks for watching, and hustle on.